Hi everyone, my name is Mathushan and my capstone is on ensuring competition within the Canadian AI sector. So before we get into the main policy problem, what exactly are LLMs? Essentially, they're large language models or just really complicated prediction systems, and essentially take what you give and predict the most reasonable result based on their training. LLMs are essentially the foundational models used within AI systems, and they are the core prediction engines. The AI sector has seen rapid growth and investment. Global revenues are expected to reach $1.8 trillion USD globally by 2030, with yearly expected growth of 26%. So how do LLMs work? Without getting too technical, imagine a storyteller that reads every book in the library. This is the training stage. LLMs are trained on massive amounts of data, and this data adjusts parameters in the LLM's brain. Now, the storyteller has photographic memory. They can recall the most relevant parts and ideas of any book they've read. This is similar to the transformer architecture that takes what you've asked and predicts the answer according to the trained parameters. Finally, when the storyteller responds to your question, they speak one word at a time, choosing each word based on everything they've said so far, similar to the token-based prediction within LLMs. Now that we have a simple knowledge of LLMs, we can start to go into the policy problem. And that starts with understanding how LLMs are developed. Essentially, there are three main phases: the architecture development phase, the training phase, and the deployment phase. The architecture development phase comes first, and during this development phase is where new techniques like the transformer or the mixture of experts architecture used within DeepSeek were developed. This requires the smartest minds in the world that are paid immense salaries, and you need a lot of capital to conduct this R&D work with no guarantee of results. As you can see here, these are the job postings at Anthropic and OpenAI, and they have very high pay ranges. As a startup or new entrant to the industry, it can be very difficult to keep up with these costs. The second comes the training phase. Better LLMs need more training, and there are two components to this: compute and data. First, you need a lot of data to train these models. The more data, the better, and the better the parameters are tuned. Many of the largest firms have large repositories of data, like Google with YouTube or Meta with Instagram. Some firms have also resorted to piracy to get immense amounts of data through services like LibGen, but new firms operating within legal bounds do not have access to the same type of data. Now, using all this terabytes and petabytes of data, you need a lot of compute to actually train the model, and that compute is very expensive. On the left, you can see the NVIDIA H100 GPU. This costs around 30 to 50 USD, $1,000 USD each, and OpenAI and most firms have thousands of these. Like, for example, the XAI Colossus supercomputer that has 100,000 of these. That's estimated to cost $3 to $5 billion. This scale is currently the industry standard if you want high performance LLMs. And again, it's very difficult to attain as a startup. The final stage is the deployment stage. Many established platforms can implement their LLMs within their services, like Gemini within Google Search and Docs, and this usage leads to data that can be used for further optimization. Lack of implementation, like seen within Canada's Cohere models, leads to much less public awareness and usage. Also, deployment takes a lot of resources, as every single time you prompt something, it fires up some of those H100 NVIDIA chips to return your result. This also increases costs and barriers to entry. So all in all, LLM development has immense barriers to entry. This is because it requires immense amounts of talent, data, and capital. And because of this, existing large tech companies have an immense competitive advantage in this space. Beyond the development of AI, many of these companies are also structured in ways where they can easily cross-subsidize their AI development. For example, here are Google and Amazon's income statements. Google gets very high margins from their ad business and Google Cloud, similar to Amazon's AWS department. They can use the surplus to drive AI and R&D without taking the same losses that startups would. Within the wider economy, the increased economic concentration has led to increased dominance. These tech companies currently dominate the economic landscape. So from all this, the problem really becomes that few stakeholders increasingly control technology that poses great societal change, that has increased economic concentration, that can result in less choice, higher prices, and less quality of services for consumers and firms. And the largest stakeholders in AI are very large and dominate the industry, and this raises concerns for Canada's domestic AI ecosystem and the viability of new entrants into the industry. So this is an LLM market chart created by the UK's Competition and Markets Authority. In the middle are the largest AI tech companies, and the sides are LLM developers. Even Canada's Cohere is at the top. From this chart, you would assume that the AI landscape is very diverse with a lot of competition, but this does not tell the full story at all. Many of these partnerships and investments are rooted in anti-competitive practices. For example, Microsoft and OpenAI have an evolving partnership where OpenAI licenses their core models to Microsoft, and Microsoft forces OpenAI to only use their compute services for OpenAI's API. There are also revenue sharing agreements within this partnership that blur the lines between the distinction of a partnership and merger. And as Microsoft continues to have large investments in OpenAI, they continue to exert significant interest. So the significant interest was also seen within the Microsoft and Inflection deal, where the initial partnership resulted in the poaching of most of the talent from Inflection. And this falls within a gray zone of competition policy as they technically didn't acquire Inflection, and it's considered and for it to be considered a killer acquisition or an acqui-hire. The FTC has launched inquiries into many of these investments and partnerships, but they're still at the very early stages. Many small Canadian startups also continue to be acquired and bought out by international firms like Darwin AI and Element AI based in Montreal. So now we can dig deeper into the current competition legislation context within Canada. Competition policy-wise, there has been a recent push to amend and modernize the Competition Act. This does include expansions to the powers to scrutinize the abuse of dominance and even competitive collaborations. The Bureau also has amended new rights to conduct formal market studies, and there have been increased oversights on merger controls. And there are two main policies supporting Canada's AI industry. So the first is the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, focused on increasing commercialization of AI technologies in Canada and setting national standards and ensuring that there's plentiful domestic talent and research. And the second is the Sovereign AI Compute Strategy, which has been implemented to support the development and growth of domestic AI systems in Canada. From the recent slides, you can see how important compute is to AI. So before I get into my recommendations, it is important to note that the scope of the problem is very large, and there are very many different angles of approach to this problem. These policies I picked are selected based on a careful evaluation of their effectiveness, efficiency, and political, financial, and implementational feasibility. These policies are not expected to solve this problem immediately, but are tuned to take measurable steps in the right direction. These policies are also designed in a way to ensure that ethical and compliant actors are not affected negatively. And the recent current international context has also played a large role in this, especially due to the election of the Trump administration. That administration has taken a strong dislike for policies like the digital services tax and has threatened economic repercussions. And due to this, far more invasive policy options were dropped in favor of these coming recommendations. So first is policy package 1. So this is focused on ensuring a competitive and fair market for AI in Canada. So first, the Competition Bureau will be directed to initiate an AI market study, taking advantage of the newly amended powers within the Competition Act. This will allow for the Bureau to legally demand information from AI firms to better understand the landscape and set up the knowledge foundation for further enforcement within the AI sector. Next, the Competition Bureau currently has guidelines for significant interest, but this is not legally defined. And because it's not legally defined, it can't be enforced. This policy calls for the continuation of the momentum built by the recent amendments to the Competition Act. And there's a window of opportunity as many stakeholders, including both sides of the political spectrum, are very open to these amendments. Specifically here, we want to legally define and enforce significant interest within the Act. This gives the Bureau the legal basis to better investigate and scrutinize gray zone partnerships like the Microsoft Inflection deal. Finally, lower threshold should be established within the merger transaction notification threshold. Currently, this is at $93 million to result in a formal notification to the Competition Bureau, but this should be lowered to $45 million. This matches recent changes made within the UK where they lowered it to $25 million pounds, which is equivalent to $45 million. And this will allow the Competition Bureau to better scrutinize the acquisition of smaller Canadian startups and intellectual property. Next is Policy Package 2. This looks to promote fair and equal access to compute. So first, we call for the reclassification of compute as national critical infrastructure, or NCIs. NCIs are essentially defined as systems, facilities, or technologies that are essential to the well-being and functioning of Canada and Canadians. Compute continues to play a larger and larger role within Canadian life and also ensures Canadian sovereignty within our digital world. The UK has also done something similar to this, as they designated the data centers as critical infrastructure, and this has resulted in greater government oversight, greater cybersecurity protections, but also greater investments within the space. Specifically, this policy looks to increase greater government oversight and careful consideration of compute within Canada, and is implemented to make way for the second policy. And the second policy is the proposed passing of the Digital Infrastructure Neutrality Act. This will ensure neutrality and access by prohibiting exclusivity agreements and ensure a regulatory framework that ensure transparent and standardized pricing of compute. This will prevent self-preferencing and cross-subsidization by large firms. Any compute provider that offers their firms services to like external firms will be regulated by this act. If you only use your compute for your firm and you do not sell it publicly, you're not impacted. Any exclusivity deals will be allowed to continue, but will be phased out within 5 years. And this policy avoids punishing ethical and compliant actors because they would have no change in their operations, while complementing existing policies like the Sovereign AI Compute Strategy to create a vibrant and domestic compute market in Canada. The final policy is much smaller, and it looks to expand the AI Compute Fund within the Sovereign AI Compute Strategy with $75 million specifically designed for university LLM and AI research and development. Industry collaboration is encouraged, but the university must be the majority lead, and the models must be open source. This would be provided as governmental compute credits to the AI supercomputer being built out by the Sovereign AI Compute Strategy. And this looks to encourage competition by ensuring that there are open source, low cost alternatives for firms in Canada. All in all, these policies take a multi-pronged approach to fill gaps within the current competition environment